Whether you're a hardcore, deathcore, gent, or pop artist, the vocals are the first thing the listener pays attention to, so having them sit perfectly in a mix is extremely important. In today's vocal mixing tutorial, I'll go over every step of my screaming vocal chain, and at the end I'll go over one aspect that shapes the tone the most: parallel, distortion, and saturation. I'll go over how to get your vocals from sounding like this to sounding like this. So if that interests you at all, let's dive right in. You can see here I have my main vocal 1, which is here, main vocal 2, both of them have 0 plugins on it, and then my main vocal chain, which is a group of all of that.
Rose on the horizon! The winds of change blowing strong!
When I'm mixing, I rarely listen to something solo just because the vocals, the guitars, the synths, the cymbals are all in the same kind of general frequency, so you have to cut out and you have to make sacrifices. So my guitars might be in 1.5K, but my vocals might also be there. Basically, you're gonna see that every step that I add, I'm compressing, I'm EQing, and the S's come out more and more. And what I like to do is I put a De-Esser first. That way, it cuts down some of the S's before I compress it, because the more compression, the more distortion I add, the more the S's and the more the high frequencies are going to come out.
A stun bruise on the horizon! The winds of change blowing strong!
Cutting out the little moments where the S's are harsher than they should be. And basically what I do is I hit this little headphone section, which is just to play only what I'm cutting. Basically, you're gonna listen and then you cut off where you hear the S's start. So my first rendition of De-Esser I have is starting at 5K. And then my second one, where is it? I have starting at 3, because the more I add, the more gross it gets. So the next plugin that I add is Devil Lock, which is my saturator and has a built-in compressor. When I'm adding it to the actual vocal chain itself, I go very light. You can see the crunch is very low, just to glue it all together a little bit right off the bat. Later, I'll distort the hell out of it and you'll see how much it adds to this vocal.
On the horizon! On the horizon!
You can hear it's just getting compressed a bit more. The tone of my voice is coming out rather than just the scratchiness. If you want, you can go to the fast section. I noticed that when I put fast on vocals, the S's come out even more than normal. So I typically just go with slow. So after my Devil Lock here, the next plugin that I have is my SSL channel. And I usually use the SSL E channel just because I like messing with this EQ type just to see which one I like best.
The winds of change blowing strong!
So it already sounds good. I'm noticing that it could use a little bit more high end. So first thing, I'm gonna add the high end that I like. Usually around 8K is a great start.
A stun bruise on the horizon! The winds of change blowing strong! A call for those who won't listen!
And that already sounds better, so check it without.
A stun bruise!
And then with.
A stun bruise!
It just gets more of that clarity throughout. A lot of my vocals end up sitting in the higher mids, so I go with a wider Q or bandwidth or whatever you want to call it. The stock is at 1.5 or whatever, I go just wide. That way I'm getting, instead of just like this much amount on the frequencies, I'm getting this much amount on the frequencies.
On the horizon! A stun bruise!
So you can see around 1.5K is a little bit mushy.
A stun bruise on the horizon! A stun bruise on the horizon!
And I actually really like it around, where is it? 3.8. It's bringing out some of like the clarity of my voice and my vocals. Usually around 2K is where my guitar frequencies are sitting quite nicely, so I don't want to cloud my mix too much.
A stun bruise on the horizon!
I feel like I don't need to cut any of my low mids. I really like the way it's sitting right now.
A stun bruise on the horizon!
I'm not gonna mess with that at all. I find that it's scooping it too much no matter where I'm putting it. So I kind of feel like my vocal can use a little bit more low end body, so let's push a little bit of low end. And for this, I'll probably keep it on bell instead of shelf, because I don't want it to raise everything from, say, 200 hertz. I want it to go around 200 hertz.
A stun bruise on the horizon! A stun bruise on the horizon! A stun bruise
like it around there, and just a little bit. And then I'll probably just cut some of the low end because my main kick frequencies are coming from like 100 hertz and lower. So I definitely don't need anything in the 70 area. So I kind of just cut out just to get rid of some of the mud and some of the distortion mud that Devil Lock gives me. And it's definitely a lot clearer to me. There's a lot less low mud. It's a little bit louder in comparison, and it's also just a little bit more S-y, which is why I have a De-Esser later. For the most part, when I'm using an SSL channel strip and I'm using the compressor, I'm using it for saturation and for the tone that it gives me. And to me, I can hear it's evening out. It is raising the volume a bit, but it's raising the volume of the quieter stuff and keeping the higher stuff at the point that it should be. Let's go to the next one. So Soothe, it's kind of like a multi-band compressor. Whatever like the harshest frequencies that are coming out, it cuts out automatically. And I'm using it just to cut out some of those mid frequencies that I don't necessarily want. I do like my vocals to be relatively mid-heavy and then have the presence of the high end. For vocals, I really like having a distressor on them. Basically, I want to even out the vocals a bit more. So by going fast with the attack, it'll cut it down almost instantly. I don't like going all the way fast because it gets a little bit too almost stale sounding. I don't like to go too fast with the release as well because it's almost like it's doing nothing. If it's all the way fast, then it'll bounce back right away as if it's barely compressing. Distressor, I really like the opto mode for vocals. A lot of the times 8:1 or 4:1 are like a great vocal compression ratio. So let me play through and we're gonna listen to where it sounds like it's capturing the vocal and squashing it in a nice way rather than just raising the volume. You can hear by going from 1.5 to 2.5, a huge difference. It's just like it's not capturing it as quick and a lot more of the vocal slips by before it gets compressed. I do like 2.5 a little bit more because you can hear, especially on Horizon, when it's 1.5, it squashes down and it's obvious that it's getting compressed, whereas when it's 2.5, it's compressing it, but it's not very obvious, and it's like it's molding things nicely before it gets to the point where it sounds over compressed. And then 1.5. Like on the eye of Horizon, it's dipping down a little bit more than I want. After the distressor, I will put another EQ. I use a lot of EQs. Certain plugins start to get harsh around a certain section. Like if you remember earlier when I was boosting the hell out of the high end on the channel strip, it gets a little harsh. Whereas if you're going to the point where it sounds really nice and you stop there, but you still need more high end, use a different plugin. They all have different sonic characteristics and they'll all allow you to use different frequencies to a different level. It does raise the volume a bit, but also like it adds like a nice warm tone, and I guess that's what the Pultecs are known for. I love Pultecs because they have the boost and attenuate. Attenuate's like cut. You're boosting from 8K, but then you're cutting from 8K, so you're doing something like this. That's the best I can describe it. With my hands. That's really nice.
A star breaks on the horizon.
I'm boosting 4 dB of 10 kilohertz as a shelf. And to me, it doesn't sound harsh. It just sounds a little more clear. Low end, does it need any more?
A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
That's cool with me. And then same thing here. I'm boosting 2 dB of 100 hertz, but I'm also cutting 1 dB of 100 hertz below that. So let's see what else.
A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
I like what 1000K is doing, and I'm only adding a little bit, just a tiny bit.
A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
And I'm going to cut a little bit of 500 hertz. I noticed that if I cut the other frequencies, they dip out a little bit too much. There's so much going on in 500 hertz in a song in general. Wherever you can cut it out, even in minimal amounts, you'll be happy about it later on.
A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
And 1.5 is a little bit too mid-rangey for me. It almost sounds more like the raw vocal without any effects. So I noticed that 3K starts to sound really good, but also starts to sound a little bit harsh. And I know that when I add my next parallels, they're going to get a little bit weirder.
A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
And to me, it's a little bit more clear, as well as just sounds a little bit better. And that's it. And now I'm noticing the horizon line is still a little bit too squashy. But the thing is, I'm going to leave it right now because when I start adding my parallels, my sound is going to drastically change, and then I'll have to continuously go back and forth, which you'll see soon enough. So next thing, I have another De-Esser just to cut out all of the S's that I'm adding with all this saturation and EQ.
Star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
So you can really hear it's making a huge difference. It's really cutting out the S's that don't necessarily sound harsh to you, but when you listen, say in car speakers or when you listen in like iPod headphones, they pop out a lot and it kind of ruins a mix, and then your mastering engineer is going to be like, okay, I got to really shape this, and then it f***s with your tone. You can see when I'm moving it to a lower frequency, it cuts out more than the S's. So I kind of just like scoop it to where this knob over here to where it's cutting out my S frequencies, but not cutting out the rest of it. And now I'm not getting any of the before I was getting and then you decide how much you want to cut out.
A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon. A star breaks on the horizon.
And then my next plugin is another EQ. I really like this FabFilter Pro 3 EQ because you can either use it for mechanical or for surgical EQs and get rid of gross frequencies. Or there's this amazing function called dynamic where you set the level and you set the frequency and it just drops it when it hits a certain threshold.
A star breaks on the horizon.
There's no vocal frequencies really needed, at least an 80.
A star breaks.
And then I like to have this function on, which basically is like a level matching function. If I cut a frequency, it'll boost the volume to what it should be level matched. So as I've said in other videos, it's important to make sure that you're level matching because otherwise you might just be raising the volume instead of actually shaping the tone.
A star breaks on the horizon.
So this is where I do most of my cutting for vocals. So I'll set something around here and then I'll drop this down. If you use this plugin, You can change the bell curve. I basically never use the stock one. It's always either 24 or 36. I can see it's really pushing there. So I know I say not to really look at what you're doing and to hear it, but I also hear that there's some boosting going on in there, especially when the percussive sounds. So I make a smaller cue, go into dynamic range, and drop your threshold so that anytime it hits this frequency at your threshold, it drops down by -2 dB. And then you can set it right here. I didn't want to cut too much of that frequency on its own. What I wanted to do is just anytime those harsh moments happen and those like big percussive moments happen, the dynamic EQ is dropping down by however much I need. And I found that that was good. I can hear it's dropping bruise a little bit too much, so little bits really make a difference. And then there's still a little bit too much mid, so let's get rid of whatever we can. To me, I like that. It's cutting out a little bit of the and it's just keeping the tone, and it's just minimally doing anything because I already have Soothe cutting out all of the gross frequencies on their own. So I don't really need to do much surgical EQ because it's already surgically EQing it for me. So for the next plugin, I have another compressor. It's my 1176. So for my distressor, I use it to do my fast attacking and to do my general compression. 1176, I'm using it to like make it more aggressive. So basically I'm going really slow with the attack, quite fast with the release, and it's pushing it rather than compressing it, which is weird. So I have it in all buttons in mode. If you hold shift and you click, it'll go into all buttons in mode, which is like your more aggressive compression. So part of why it's more aggressive is that the release is way faster than it normally is. I've set it to a way where it's level matching. It's not raising the volume, but it almost sounds clearer and it just sounds more pushed. And you can notice that it's also pushing the S's out a bit more too, which is okay because I got rid of as much S's as I wanted before the heavy compression. You'll notice that if you cut a lot of the gross frequencies out first and then you add your compression, you can get away with a lot more than you would if you had your compression first. It just sounds a little bit more forward in the mix. And then my last plugin is another EQ. This is my fourth EQ. A little bit more high end, a little bit more mid range in the 2K. And again, I'm minimally adding anything, but it makes a huge difference, as you can hear. So that's it for my bass tone. That's my whole vocal chain, but that's only part of it. So the next section, put my send and returns on. What I normally do for my main vocal reverb, as I've discussed in this episode right here, I make it short. That way it's not getting in the way of my long reverbs, which I do with my dub vocals. And you can hear it's just adding a little bit of width and just a little bit, which is all I need from it. So the big move here is my distortion on my parallels. So as I discussed earlier with Devil Lock as being my second plugin on my vocal chain, I go very lightly with the saturation and compression just to get a little bit of tone. And then with my parallel, I put Decapitator, which is more of a distortion, and I just go crazy with it. And what's typical with metal music with bands like end with knocked loose structures. Like any band that has screaming has this kind of technique going on. So what I like to do right off the bat, just hit punish.
Austin Bruce! Austin Bruce!
So now I'm gonna switch between these 5 options and see which one sounds best for my vocal for this song. And at this point I can put my main vocals a little quieter.
Austin Bruce! Austin Bruce! Austin Bruce! Austin Bruce! Austin Bruce!
E is cool. It's a little bit too high-endy for me, so I'm gonna go with P.
Austin Bruce! On the horizon! Austin Bruce! On the horizon!
It's huge on the vocals, and that's why I don't go too crazy with my main vocal chain, because my parallel is punishing, if you will.
Austin Bruce! On the horizon! Austin Bruce! On the horizon!
2 is pretty good. If it's lower, then it doesn't sound distorted enough. And if it's higher than 2, it sounds too distorted to the point where it's not really adding, it's kind of taking away. And then basically it's very similar for my dub vocal chain. I just kind of go around and I cut out whatever's in the way.
Austin Bruce! On the horizon!
So since my main vocals are so mid and high mid present, I kind of cut that stuff out. As you can see, I'm cutting out 1.5, boosting a little bit of 1, but not much. Boosting a little bit of 1.5, but less than I'm cutting out. Boosting more of the lows and cutting quite a bit of the highs. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but just keep the same kind of techniques I use for main vocals, except cut out whatever is getting in the way. And then, yeah, just a long reverb on the dub vocals. Mixing vocals is one important aspect, but recording and layering them properly is the first step in getting a professional sound. So if you want to level up your vocal game, check out this video right here. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!